Most negotiators in the traditional sense have often depended on positional bargaining, in which each side takes a position on an issue, argue its favor, and attempt to get an outcome as close as that initial position as possible. People may bargain hard, taking up an aggressive or extreme position and holding on to it, or they may bargain soft, that is making concessions, okay? Either way, positional bargaining will just foster a win-lose or a lose-lose approach when it comes to negotiation. The problem with this approach is that it tends to be unsatisfactory, all right? Any agreement reached may reflect a mechanical splitting of the difference between final position rather than a solution carefully crafted to meet the legitimate interest of the parties in the negotiation. And again, that can just mean wasting time and then ending up destroying the relationship. And this is where principled negotiation comes in. This approach to negotiation was brought out by Roger Fisher and William in their book Getting to Yes, okay, negotiating an agreement without giving in. In this case, the negotiators or the negotiation focuses mainly on a collaborative approach. The principle advocates on being hard on the problem, okay, but being soft on people. When you're talking about principled negotiation, there are 4 fundamental things that guide them, okay? And these are: number 1, separating people from the problem; number 2, focusing on reconciling interest; number 3, generating a variety of ideas and options rather than pushing for a predetermined answer; and number 4, insisting that the agreement reflects some objectively fair standard. And here is how all that works. Principle 1, separating people from the problem or the issue. Now, this is concerned with the way people interact within the negotiation. As a negotiator, you should not be getting personally involved with issues or positions taken. Doing this will lead to a positional bargaining in which you just push for your position, and that will encourage a win-lose approach. As a negotiator, you have to remember that you're not just negotiating for yourself. You're actually negotiating for your employer, or you're negotiating for your organization. Which means what? Which means if you disagree, you have to remember the subject matter of the negotiation is not the person, but the actual issue you desire out of the process. Now, let's say you're going through this, okay, and you realize that there is a problem with the communication. Why could that be a problem? I mean, some of the reasons why communication could go wrong, first of all, it's because you're humans, right? And so some of the issues that could occur here could involve things like trying to impress one's own team instead of clearly stating one's position to the other party and working towards an agreement. Number 2, not actively listening in order to understand the other party and find out common ground, but listening for contentious points to contradict. Or number 3, misunderstanding what the other party says. That could be the problem. Again, how do you fix that? Because that's the reason why you're on that table. So how do you fix that? Well, try to look at things from the other party's point of view. Number 2, try not to project your fear of things going wrong onto the other party before anything actually happens. Number 3, try not to direct blame onto people by using you. Instead, focus on the problem. Number 4, make it clear that you're listening to the other party by repeating back the key information to them. And number 5, use apologies where need be. Now, the second principle is focus on interest and not position. So what you want to do here is separate, basically differentiate between the position the person holds from the interest behind that position. Figuring out a party's position is not that difficult since most tend to make such public. This could be things like their demands or quantitative targets. A party could say, we need to increase price by 15% to cover our costs. And then you choose to focus on the number since it seems like a flexible number. The real question is, what is that party's underlying interest? I mean, it could be the need to increase profit. That is why they're interested in that number. Remember, interests are underlying needs that people have that drive their position, hence more useful to uncover and focus on. Think of it this way. Let's say you're negotiating over a contract, right, with your supplier, and then the supplier says, we are going to increase our price by X%. And so you obsess over that number. But then you take your time and realize that the reason why they're doing that is because they've just got a new job and they want to impress their boss. So they think by showing more money, then they've done a good job. So if you're working collaboratively, then it means you need to figure out how they can impress their boss, and you also don't have to pay more. So that could mean something like saying you're going to give you a discount if you reduce your pay duration. I mean, if they normally take 60 days to pay, then you say, okay, here's the thing. If you really want to look good, here's what you're going to do. We'll give you a 15% discount on this shipment, but you have to pay us within, say, 30 days rather than 60 days. So in that case, they can go with the win, and you also go with the win. So that is what happens if you actually use this principle. That is focusing on interest and not position. So remember these tips. Find out more about the party's position and why they hold that position. Number 2, clearly express your own interest and discuss them together. Number 3, focus on solutions rather than dwelling on the past. And number 4, focus clearly on your interest, but remain open to different proposals and positions. The third principle is invent positions for mutual gains. This negotiation principle is about thinking creatively regarding the benefit both parties get from doing business. It's about finding a solution that both parties could benefit from. The more option or tradable brought on the table, the better. And finally, insist on using objective criteria. That is the fourth principle. Insist on using objective criteria. This principle is about ensuring that the negotiation is focused on outcomes based on objective criteria that is productive. So what success looks like needs to be defined and ideally agreed in advance of the negotiation by both parties. Not the actual terms of success, because that is the reason why you're negotiating, okay? Because if your idea, okay, if the reason why you're negotiating is actually to improve on performance of the contract, then you're negotiating about what you want to be done so that the performance can increase. Those are the actual terms. But both parties in that negotiation understand that the whole idea is you're not happy with how the performance has been, how the contract has been performed, and you want something to be done in that case. All right. So that is the idea behind this principle. So what is the principle again? Insist on using objective criteria.